Oh, good morning, and look at that. It is an absolutely spectacular day here in South Florida. I am Kenny Bulgarian. Good morning. Today is Monday, November 14th, and I am your host of the party. So what is it that we need to know, right? Well, the Senate falls to the Democrats, and the House is still in limbo. Joey is in Bali at the G20, expected to meet face-to-face with Xi Jinping. Oil is under a bit of pressure. A rise in COVID cases in China and demand cut outlook by OPEC is all the rage, which I think is ridiculous. The PPI is due out tomorrow. Will it mimic what we heard from the CPI? And if so, what will the algos do? And what do we have for dinner? Well, we're going to try the raviolis for your first Thanksgiving course, in case you didn't want the Italian wedding soup. Okay, so look, stocks rallied into the end of the week last week, right? The election, having taken place on Tuesday, remains unresolved, causing some angst and anxiety for the markets and for both parties. Although some of it has since been called, right? The Dems now in control of the Senate while the House remains in flux. And then we have the FTX Binance drama. The news that FTX was circling the drain after running into a little bit of an accounting problem, and how Binance would not step in to stop the bleed only sent the crypto markets into a tailspin, resulting in more questions than answers. Anything crypto plunging as the drama unfolded. And then on Saturday, news that FTX got hacked, somehow losing control of millions of dollars of investor assets, only adding now to this morning's angst. Now look, so many of the crypto enthusiasts, the smart money types, have to now explain how they didn't know what was going on. I guess the words due diligence doesn't apply in this case, as Sam Bankman-Fried pulled the wool over so many eyes. And as the story unfolds, it gets even more complicated and complex as the web of lies and relationships comes to light. SBF now somewhere in the Bahamas, while both his parents, who are professors at Stanford University and both intimately involved in this scam, appear to be off limits, at least for now. Never mind other relatives that are members of the World Economic Forum that also helped to push FTX into the spotlight, all now somehow responsible for this Enron-like scam. Never mind some of the smartest names in the venture capital world that apparently had no idea what was going on either. And all this news did cause angst across the equity markets as some crypto investors turned to their stock portfolios to help manage cash. And then on Wednesday, we got a better than expected CPI inflation report, which suggested that maybe the aggressive rate hikes taken by the Fed might just be working their way through the system to combat rising prices. Remember though, one data point does not make a trend, but it could be the start of one. So while the data point was positive, it is still very much in its infancy. So expect more and more attention is going to be paid to the upcoming inflationary data points to come. And this week, it's going to be all about the PPI report, right? That's tomorrow, and what it's going to detail about inflation at the producer level. Are input prices still elevated? Will the PPI tell us something different than the CPI? Expectations for this data point are expected to be up month over month, but down slightly year over year, which would mimic what we saw in the CPI. So you just have to sit tight until we get this data. And all of this drama saw shares of big tech zoom higher. Big mega cap names that have been unnecessarily punished found plenty of buy interest, right? Apple was up 11% for the week. Amazon up 11% for the week. Semiconductors, Nvidia, AMD up 20% for the week. Intel up 11%. While the semi-ETF, the SOXX or the SMH were both up better than 14%. Disruptive tech up 13%. Cybersecurity up 8%. The value trade is now up 15% since the low of October, while the growth trade is up 12%. Energy and the oil services stocks continue to surge, right? It is still on fire. The XLE is up 35% since early October. It's up 68% year to date, while the OIH, the oil services ETF, is ahead by 61% since October 1st. It's up 77% year to date. Names in that sector include ones that you know: Schlumberger, Halliburton, Baker Hughes, and Helmerich and Payne. Friday also saw money move into communications, the XLC, consumer discretionary, XLY, retail, XRT, and basic materials. Treasuries also benefited from investor dollars as prices rose, sending yields lower. The 2-year yield falling to 4.3%, down from 4.7 earlier in the week. The 10-year ended the week yielding 3.8, down from 4.25 earlier in the week, right? So money moved into bonds and sending yields low. By the end of the day on Friday, the Dow gained 33 points. The S&P was up 36. The NASDAQ gained a whopping 210 points. The Russell's up 15 points. And the transports were ahead by 300 points. And it was all very exciting, and expect the excitement and opportunity to continue this week as we hopefully get a resolution on the House vote, bringing that chapter to a close. Now look, it ain't over till it's over, and the Georgia Senate race is not over until December 6th. And no matter how that turns out, the GOP is not going to take control of the Senate. So it's a non-event in terms of control, but it is an event in terms of what it says about the voters in Georgia and what they want, right? What they expressed. In Sydney, Australia last night, Fed Governor Chris Waller told us that the markets and the algos overreacted to the latest CPI report. Can you imagine that? And policymakers have a ways to go before ending interest rate hikes. So all of this ongoing speculation about a Fed pivot anytime soon is nothing but noise. Something that I've said over and over again. And while the December and January moves might be at a slower pace, it is not a pivot. We have to get to the terminal rate of 5.25% to 5.5% before we even consider pausing, never mind pivoting. Which doesn't mean that you don't invest. Remember, the market is a discounting mechanism, right? It looks out 6 to 12 months. So if you want to be in the game, you have to stop trying to time the market and create and stick to a plan, taking advantage of both the highs and the lows, making sure that you have a plan that reflects who you are, where you are in the time and risk scale. In the end, you can't read too much into any single data print at all. So what the latest CPI report suggests that inflation has slowed, it is not slowing, right? It's slowed, but it's not slow. It remains at 7.7%, near 40-year highs. Slow is when it's back to the 2% target, which is not happening anytime soon. Friday's University of Michigan inflation survey revealed that expectations for 1-year and 5 to 10-year inflation expectations are up 5.1% next year, while the longer term, the 5 to 10-year, is at holding at 3%. So I expect that the Fed is going to change their 2% target to 3% by this time next year to make it easier to hit their target. Yesterday, Joey went to Bali to join in on the G20 meeting where he's expected to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping for the first time since his presidency began. Although no one expects any strength or resolve in this meeting, especially around Taiwan, the origins of COVID-19, and nuclear aspirations by China, right? So do not expect this meeting to drive the market action, but you can expect that it will drive the news cycle. This morning, oil is trading down 80 cents at 88.16 a barrel. Guess why? Well, apparently there's another surge in COVID across parts of the major Chinese cities, threatening yet more lockdowns, and that would mean less demand by China for oil. Remember, they are the world's biggest importer of oil, so the day-to-day price of oil is going to be impacted by what they say. But the long-term price of oil will be determined by, naturally, global supply and demand. And while demand is strong, OPEC will keep supply tight enough to keep prices right in here or eventually force them higher. I'm still in the camp that we're going to see $100 a barrel oil before we see 60. Currently, we're stuck between two trend lines, 85 and 90. If they can convince markets that demand is waning, then look for oil to test the low 80s. And if not, then look for oil to test 95. This morning, OPEC cut their demand outlook as they began to slow production. The dollar index collapsed on the back of the better than expected CPI report, ending the day on Friday at 108.45, and this morning it's lower again at 107.35. The reaction by the dollar telling you that the expectation now is for the Fed to pause and possibly pivot sooner than expected, which is ridiculous, right? Remember that rumor came out last week and it was quickly denied. And when it came out again, it's being denied again because the Fed is not at the point of where they're going to pivot at all. And while the dollar index has fallen about 5% in the last 2 weeks, it will test probably long-term support at 104.85 if they push it lower. Although talk of continued higher rates in December and January is going to help to give dollar strength, right? So it's finding some support this morning right here at 107. This morning, stock futures are down, which shouldn't be a surprise. Dow futures are down 60 points, S&P's down 12, the Nasdaq down 75, and the Russell's down 6. The G20 will be the focus, along with economic comments from New York President Johnny Williams. Tomorrow, Donnie plans to make a major announcement, which is also exhausting. He just needs to go away, and the GOP needs to push him to the side. Economic data this week, Tuesday, Empire Manufacturing, and the all-important PPI reading, and that will be the focus tomorrow. Wednesday's going to bring us retail sales, industrial production, capacity utilization. Thursday's going to bring us housing starts and building permits, both expected to be down fairly big. Friday's existing home sales is also expected to be down by 7.2% month over month, a reflection of what higher mortgage rates are doing to the industry. Current 30-year rates are 7.25%, soon to be 7.75% by year end if they keep raising rates the way they expect to. European markets this morning are up by about 0.3%. There's really nothing going on there. They're just continuing to digest what's happening here in the U.S. The S&P closed at 39.92, up 36 points after it kissed S&P 4,000. We are now up and through two trend lines and appear to want to test the downtrending long-term line at 4,080. If tomorrow's PPI report is better than expected, then expect the algos to take us to that trend line in one swift move. But also expect lots of analysis and then listen to what the different Fed members have to say. Will the narrative change, or will they mimic what Chris Waller told us last night? In the end, the story won't change until we hit a terminal rate of at least 5.25%, which is 1.25% higher from where we are currently. Again, look, stick to the plan. Talk to your advisor, tweak where necessary. Look at the mega cap multinationals that generate good cash flow, pay nice dividends, and can weather the storm, right? Consider that a well-balanced portfolio. Okay, so now what are we having for dinner? We're going to have the raviolis and meat sauce. Now, you can try this as your first Thanksgiving course meal instead of, if you don't want to have the Italian wedding soup that I gave you last week. Okay, so first you have to start with the meat sauce, right? So you need garlic, you need onions, big white onions, you need 4 chicken thighs, you need country ribs on the bone. You also need to have made your meatballs, right? Your meatballs are separate. You need kitchen ready tomatoes, not puree. You want crushed tomatoes. And if you can't buy the crushed ones, just buy the plum tomatoes in the juice and just run them through the blender, right? So you want to start by chopping up the garlic, put the oil in the pot, bringing it up, toasting the garlic a little bit. Now add the onions, right? I add 2 big white onions because the onions are really sweet and they make the sauce taste so good. Add the onions, saute those around for a little bit. Now take the chicken thighs with the skin on and put them in with the onions and brown them, right? You want to brown them up all nice. You want the fat from the skin to kind of seep into the sauce. Once the thighs are browned, remove the thighs, take them out, just put them on a dish and put them on the side. Now take the 4 country ribs on the bone, put those in with the onions, right? Brown those up. Let those sit in the onions for, 5 or 10 minutes. You want to be nice and brown. You're going to add them back anyway. So just get them brown. Let the juice also seep into the onions and the oil so far. Once you do that, take the country ribs out as well. Put those on the plate with the chicken. Now you're going to add 3 cans or 4 cans, depending on how much you're making, but 3 cans of the kitchen-ready tomatoes in the 28-ounce can, right? Open it up. If they're not kitchen-ready, then run them through the blender, like I said, and then pour them into the pot. that has the onions and all the oil from the chicken and the country ribs. Now you want to season that with salt and pepper. You want to take fresh basil. You want to put that in there. You want to take a pinch of sugar, stir it up, bring it to a boil, and then turn it down to simmer. Once you turn it down to simmer, now you're going to add back all the meat. You're going to take the chicken, add that back with the skin on it, because then you'll take the skin off after. Then you're going to take the country ribs, add that back, and then you're going to take your meatballs and add those in, right? Meatballs that you've made on the side, add those into the sauce as well. Bring it to, let it simmer, stir it, and just let it simmer. It's going to simmer for a good hour and a half or two. You want to constantly stir it, and then it's done. After that, it's done. You can turn it down. You should make the sauce on Wednesday and then put it in the fridge overnight and then take it out the next day, right? When you take it out the next day, let it warm up to room temperature. Go in there with a slotted spoon. Find the chicken pieces, the chicken thighs. Then remove the skin at that point and put the chicken thighs back in the sauce. Now, when you heat it up, just heat it up on simmer, nice and slowly. When you're getting ready for your Thanksgiving first meal, you want to put a pot of salted water on the back burner, bring it to a rolling boil. Once it does, you want to take the fresh-made raviolis that you went out to the store and bought, not the frozen ones. Try to get the fresh-made ones, right? Dump them in the water. They're going to sink to the bottom. You'll know they're done when they all float to the top. Once they float to the top, they are done. Now you got to use a slotted spoon, because if you try to put these through the colander, they'll smash and they'll break apart. You don't want that to happen. So using a slotted spoon, make each individual plate, right? So put 4 or 5 raviolis, depending on if you get the big ones or the small ones. 4 or 5 raviolis in the plate. Take a ladle or two of the tomato sauce that you've made and put it over the raviolis. Serve, and make sure there's always fresh grated Parmigiana cheese on the table for anyone that wants it. This is such a great way. It was the way we started every Thanksgiving when I was a kid. My grandmother made raviolis as the first dish every Thanksgiving meal. It was just the way it was. I continue to do that today, and I look forward to doing it again this Thanksgiving. Look, it's going to be a beautiful day outside. It's going to be a great week. Until tomorrow, take good care.